another episode of Significant Coaching, the podcast where we dive into the journeys, philosophies, and insights of the brightest minds in sports coaching. I'm your host, Matt Rogers, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. She's a trailblazer on the softball field, a transformational leader, and now the head softball coach at the University of Montana. Coach Stef Ewing has a storied history, from her days as a collegiate standout at Oregon State, helping her team reach their first ever College World Series, to coaching success at Cal State San Marcos, where she turned the program into a national contender. And now she's poised to make her mark in the Big Sky Conference with the Montana Grizzlies. Here's my conversation with the incomparable Stef Ewing. Coach, let's talk a little bit about what you've gone through the last 6-7 years. You were a top assistant at two really good D1 programs. You jumped to San Marcos, and you took over a program that was at the bottom. Year 2, you run into COVID. Year 3, the season's canceled. And then you come back in year 4, and you're in the Super Regionals. Year 5, you're in the World Series. Year 6, you're back in the Regionals. How the heck did you make that happen?
When I got to San Marcos, the first thing I always remember is I'm like, man, nobody knows about this place, but this place is great. Southern California, it's in North County, San Diego, beautiful field surrounded by palm trees. You get the ocean breeze. And I'm like, why are we not successful here? You're in the mecca of softball.
Right.
And it was just a lot of recruiting and getting people to believe in a vision. But just to me, it all comes down to the players. I'm fortunate that I had a group of girls that really bought in and were passionate about softball. They were passionate about each other and being good teammates. And that group that really changed the program is seniors this year. There's 13 of them. They were all freshmen. The year we won 40 plus games, they were all freshmen.
That is 1,000 times more impressive, Coach. Wow.
They're just a great group of young ladies. I still text with them and just say, hey, I'm just really looking forward to seeing what amazing things you guys do this year. This is how special of a group it was. I took the job here and not one kid went in the transfer portal from Cal State San Marcos.
That is such a sign of what you created there in terms of character and believing in the university, believing in their education. That's so great, Coach.
I don't quite know what we put in the water to make such a big change coming out of COVID. During COVID, we weren't even allowed to practice. Some schools were allowed to do like a virtual practice. We were allowed to do this, Zoom. And I had one-on-one Zooms every week with every player on the team. And we just talked. How are you doing? How's your family? What's going on? How are you staying busy? We didn't talk a lot of softball. We had a team meeting once a week. And the girls would play catch, and I'd put them into small groups so they'd be able to catch up with each other, and I'd update them on what's going on. And those updates usually weren't fun. They weren't what anybody wanted to hear because it just continued to go on. And then we didn't even play the next year. And it was just a lot of explaining to them, you know what, life isn't fair. And sometimes some people get to do things other people don't get to do. And this is the hand that we're dealt. But having those conversations and it being way more about life than about softball is why that group was so special. And they continue to be a really special group because they loved the game so much that they wanted to come back and they came back hungry. But it was just about getting them through the COVID years, because for us, it was years at San Marcos. It wasn't just the one.
No.
And it was tough. I went and started coaching club softball because we couldn't do anything. And my assistant coach, longtime assistant coach, AJ Robinson, the second year he went and volunteered at San Diego State because they played, and he ran a club team in San Diego. It's now Team San Diego, but it was the East Cobb Bullets of San Diego.
Sure.
So I went and I was coaching 14 and 16 under softball as a head coach at a D2 school. I was doing it because I needed the game and I wanted to be around kids. Yeah. And that was just a special group. I liked it so much that I even did it again the year that we started playing in the fall.
Really?
That was crazy. I don't know what I would think. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I was leaving Cal State San Marcos to go home to change my hat and put on my Bullet stuff and then go to hitting on Tuesdays. And then we had our defensive practices on Thursdays. And we combined them with the 18. So it was really beneficial for me because, man, when you're on the field and you're working with kids, you understand speed of the game
Right.
at the 14, 16, 18 under level, and then you understand the speed of the game at the college level. I think it just really helped me as a coach to be like, okay, that's going to continue to play at the next level. That's too slow. And just really helps you as a recruiter. Because for me, I think one of the hardest things for me as a recruiter is you just go through your whole entire season in college, and
Right.
then you go to Zoom into June
Yeah.
and you watch high school level softball. It's slow compared to,
Right.
so you're okay. How slow is slow, and it's you have to make that
Yeah.
adjustment. Exactly, it's not torture, but it's a different speed of the game.
It really is. Yeah.
And I tell everybody, I'm like, anybody can recruit Ferraris, right? Anyone can show up to a field and find the Ferraris. And I've never been a coach. Still, I haven't recruited a Ferrari to the programs that I've been to because it's just that's the cream of the crop. But man, do I find a lot of kids that become Ferraris. And
Right.
that's just the thing that I specialize in and just feel like getting to know people and really getting into the trenches. And I love working with kids at camp. It's one of my favorite things. And for me, I think that's just the biggest thing that I've been able to do as a coach is recruit very well.
Yeah.
And when I sit down and I tell a family, it's more than just softball. Like softball is what we do, but it's not who we are. And when your daughter comes and plays for me, the biggest thing that I want to make sure that happens is that she gets her degree and that when she does graduate, she feels prepared to go out in the world and have conversations and do what she wants to do. Because I ask every kid, what do you want to do after this?
Right.
Do you want to become a teacher? Do you want to become an FBI agent? What do you want to do? And my job is to help you get there. How can I help you get there? How can I help you with the life things that you need to do to be prepared? Because the reality is, and it's not a knock on softball, that becoming a professional softball player is not a profession that's going to pay your bills.
Right.
We're not there yet. I hope we get there, and there's a new league that's forming, and I sure hope we get there. But the reality is, 99.8% of the girls that play college softball is that this is setting them up for the rest of their lives. And that's the most important thing to me is when I get the texts and the phone calls of when they're done playing of, hey, guess what? One of my girls who she tortured me for 2 years at San Marcos. And she texted me and was like, hey, coach, guess what? I'm now LAPD SWAT. And
Oh,
oh my gosh, like that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And I hope you never come
wow.
knocking on my door, but you're going to be great at that. And those are the cool things as a coach, right? Is that you get to see, you get to have those 4 or 5 years with those players, but then they become women who just excel in the world. And that's to me what it's all about. That's my why. That's why I'm here. And I think that's why we get wins on the field is because my relationship with a player is never going to be dependent on what they do for me on the field. It's all about the whole holistic part of what this is.
Anybody listening and doesn't understand what significant, passionate coaching is all about, coach, you just knocked it out of the park with how you go about your business and why you love the game and why you do what you do. So that makes me so happy. I'm going to go on a real strange tangent on you because I loved what you talked about with how important that those Zoom calls were during COVID. My wife and I we went on our first date. And literally the next day, she moved to Denver, Colorado, and I moved to the Quad Cities in Iowa. So the next 6 months, we wrote letters every day and we would talk on the phone at night. And I proposed 4 months later. We got married 6 months later. And we've been married for 27 years. And people ask, we got married so young. How did you make it last? I think those first 6 months where we had to become friends and had to listen to each other and had to have high level conversations. For me, that was the reason our marriage is so strong. And it hit me. You got to know your girls over COVID at a level that most coaches never get the time to do, never take the time to get to know their character, get to know their families, get to know what scares them, what excites them. So I find that fascinating. That might be the greatest lesson of this podcast is how important it is to build those relationships with your kids and figure out what kind of relationship they want with you. Have you?
Absolutely. And I'll say this, I can do a much better job at talking to my players more. because it's really important for me, like every day when the girls come to practice, that they say hello to me. And if they don't, I literally go up to them and I'm like, you didn't say hello. Just walk right by me. I was like, did you miss me? Do I have an invisibility cloak on? What's going on here? And because I like to check in on them. When we went into individuals, our 8-hour weeks, we went into basically 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week. And I told them, I said, we're doing that because I want to see you every day. I don't all of a sudden want there to be a misconnection. I want to be able to
Yeah,
see you guys every day and connect. And I think it's something that young adults, it's a phase that they go through during college, is being able to know when they need help or when they need assistance in something
right,
and feeling comfortable enough to ask for it. You
right.
step in the classroom for the first time and you look at the syllabus and you're like, oh man, this class is going to be tough. How long is it going to take you to decide to go ask for help from the professor or get some help? Is it going to be at the beginning and be proactive? Is it going to be after you fail the first test? I think those are those life things that are so important, that when you are recruiting someone or you're getting to know somebody, I have to be able to establish that trust of, I'm here to help you, but I can only help what I know and I can't help what I don't know. So please, if you need something, come to me because I'll move mountains for you. But
Right.
I can only help what I know. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about with your wife and being able to establish that trust and be
Yeah.
vulnerable, that
Yeah.
you really feel like, okay, I can go to this person when I need something.
Yeah.
Um, and luckily for me as a softball coach, I get it. I get all realms of it, right? You get the athletic part, and usually it's that athletic part. But then I talk to them all the time about the social and how hard it is for freshmen, fall of their freshman year. It's the hardest 6 months of anyone's life.
That's right.
I called my parents and cried every week. I was like, I want to come home. And they were
Yep.
like, no.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And
I,
I tell
I just
everybody,
wrote a blog last week, and it's about learning how to live without your parents' umbrella or net.
yep.
It takes a year.
The talk I have with every recruit that comes in is, I say, this is going to be fall of your freshman year. All in the same day. You're going to have no money.
That's
You're going
right.
to be out of gas. You're going to have the worst practice you've ever had. You're going to fail a test.
Yeah.
You have to do laundry. You have no food. And then you call your person and they don't answer. And it's all going to happen on the same day. And you have to be able to find that moment and be like, you know what? The sun's going to come up tomorrow and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that happens to every single student, not just student athlete, every single student who
Yep.
goes to college fall of their freshman year. Just life hits you in the face so hard.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this?
That's
And
right.
you feel alone. And you want to talk about that feeling of being on an island. It
Yeah.
happens. And that's where you need people to feel comfortable enough to know, hey, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's going to be okay. Today doesn't define me, doesn't define my experience or my decision, and I'm going to be okay. But man, when you're going through it, it's hard. You just feel like
Yep.
you are rolling downhill and
Yep.
there's nothing that can stop you. And
Yep. You hit it. It's so funny because every kid thinks they're going to be the one that's not going to go through it.
yeah,
Everyone thinks I got this. By the time they get there, and then they realize I have to go through this. And that's why, and you tell me if I'm wrong, you talk about the average student and then the student athlete. That's what's so great about playing a sport, whether it's junior college, whether it's D3, whether it's a Christian college, whether it's D2 or D1 or NAI. When you're on a team, you are built into a support system that you don't have when you're not an athlete. You have sisters, you have brothers, you have coaches, you have people watching you, and you don't even know they're watching you, going, oh, something's not right there. So, what are some of the things you have in place with your program where you're helping those freshmen, those newcomers, just transition into being an adult? Are there things that you guys are doing in terms of academics, whether it's study halls, grade checks, things like that? Are there things that you're just making sure you're checking the pulse every week or two?
so we have a mandatory 8 hours a week of study hall for any newcomer, whether it's a freshman or a transfer. They get those hours in our academic center. They
Nice.
get an hour a week credit of study hall if they go to a home sporting event, because I love to encourage them to go watch other teams. If you want people to come to your games, you got to go to theirs. Luckily, when I came to the University of Montana, we have a huge support staff. So we have someone who works in academics who is meeting with our young ladies every week and checking in on them. And then we do something called a tracer, which basically it flags if someone's starting to struggle in a class so that we know. For me as a coach, when these girls show up to practice, you can just tell. If it's a hey, you're like, she's doing good. If it's
Yeah.
a hey, it's like, hey, all right, I need to check in with her. Or if it's even less than that. And for me, that's something that I pick up on right away is just people's body language.
Yep.
And I know when they come to softball, it's the best part of their day. And we talk all the time about, hey, whatever's going on outside of softball, we need to leave it outside of the gates. But when you talk to someone every day and see them every day, and all of a sudden the hey is in a different tone, or it's something completely different, to me, that's when you've got to check in. I was very much so like, when you come to practice, you have to be this way. And I wasn't just being a person at that point. Because
Right.
sometimes I show up to practice and I'm in a bad mood, and maybe it's just going to take me 20 minutes to get rolling in it.
That's
Um,
right.
but I think through getting to know my players more and being more understanding and listening more, that now all the information that I need to get them to be able to perform successfully on the field is all about how are they doing.
Yeah.
It's just like anybody. If you're struggling with something, you're not going to be able to perform highly in what you're doing. It's going to affect you in all areas of your life. So for me, the more authentic that I can be and the more authentic they can be when I see them, to be able to gauge that, hey, how are we doing? Oh, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on, and be able to know that. The quicker that I can become aware of that and just talk to them as a person is the quicker I can get them to be able to perform better in the classroom, be able to have them perform on the field. Because that's what it's all about. When things are going good and people are rocking and rolling, things are going good. But all of a sudden, when something happens and you hit a bump, it starts to affect you in all areas. It's not just one. And so being able to have those touch points, check in with the girls is great. I'm a lucky coach. I sit in my office and my door's open and I have people popping in all the time. And they're popping in not because they have problems all the time, but they're just popping in because they want to say hi. Hey,
Yeah.
coach, I was over in the academic center. Your office is right here. Just got done with study hall. Just wanted to say hi. How are things going? And to me, that's the kind of environment that I try to create and foster. This year, for me, it felt like I had 21 freshmen coming into a new job.
Yeah.
The very first thing that we did was have team dinner at my house. And we
Awesome.
were literally in my kitchen, and I was like, can you tell me your name, where you're from, why you love the University of Montana, and what positions do you play? Like, I want to know. Because I told the team I intentionally did not watch film. I wanted every kid to have a clean slate. So there was no preconceived notion on my part of, oh, she plays here and does this and is like this. It was a clean slate for everybody. Our first team meal went great. And then this fall, it turned into basically weekly team meals at my house, where it got to the point where the girls would be like, hey, can you make fajitas again? And I bought industrial size to go containers so I'd make extra food so they could take food to go.
Love it.
Well, all fall, it was an open invitation. You didn't have to come there, and you didn't have to stay. You could literally come and fill a to go container and leave. And it turned into me having to put time stipulations on it because there was a playoff game between the Dodgers and the Padres, and me living in San Diego, all of a sudden there's 20 Dodger fans on my softball team, and they're all in my house rooting for the Dodgers while I'm cooking them dinner. But I think it just speaks to how comfortable they started to feel being around me and each other and our coaching staff and my family, that they feel like they can come over to my house and lay on the couch and just relax. And to me, I want that for every student and every player that comes through our program. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel like we're here for them and we're here to help them. And my job is to help them navigate the 4 or 5 years that it's going to take for them to go through school. And softball is just part of it and not the only part of it. And it's great to see when, even during our recruiting process, we changed how we were doing our visits. and started bringing families to my house on the visit. And
Wow.
wow, does that really impact people? I'm going to make you dinner and let's just talk. Because I just found when you take people to a restaurant,
Yeah,
it's if it's a big group, it's really hard to talk to everybody.
it is.
And so being able to be in an environment where people just felt like they could mingle and move around, I just felt like I was able to have way better conversations with parents and with the recruits. And then we'd have girls from the team come over, and it was just a way for them to all just be like, okay, it's not just order our drink, order our entree, and leave. It's let's just have real, authentic conversations, and this is what we do. So I've become quite the cook. I think that's my way of handling stress in this new job is cooking for the team because it just takes my mind like completely away from softball and all the things
Yeah,
that I need to do. And it's
great.
just, okay, now I need to do this. My mom was flying in to help cook for the team, and
I
it's
love it.
it's become this whole thing. Yeah, January 11th, we have our return team first meal before we start practice on the 12th.
Or
And
it gets crazy.
oh, I don't want to say it's going to get crazy because it's been crazy, but at least now we're going to start playing games that count. And
Yes.
it I think all the warm and fuzzies are going to be over from the fall, and it's okay. Let's go.
Coach, I've hired as an AD, I've hired so many coaches and done so many interviews. I'm telling you, they Montana must have known that you were the coach for this position within 10 minutes because you're so smart and you're so creative and you really care about the kid above and beyond anything softball related. And it just makes me so happy to hear. There's so many things I'm going to steal from you just in our first 20 minutes here talking. One of the things I've always done, and probably much more in my later years as a coach, is I always talk to the kids about what relationship do you want with me? It's not about what relationship I want with you. You have to decide what you want that relationship to look like. And it sounds like you've created an environment for your kids to really figure out how they want to be with you. Is it just, hey, coach, let's watch some film, let's do practice, and then I'm gone? Or do I want this to be family? Do I want this to feel like you're my mom? Do you have those conversations? Natural. It happens if it happens. Or rest them.
I
Because I'm
think
worried about this generation. I'm worried about the text, Twitter,
sure.
TikTok generation that they can't connect because they don't know how. So I'm really intrigued by that.
For me, it's organic. I don't try to force it. It's funny, the girls, they were asking me if I was on TikTok, and I looked at them and I was like, no, I'm not on TikTok. I don't even have the app on my phone. And they're
Right.
like, well, will it be in our TikTok? And I was like, sure. And so I think part of it is meeting them where they are, meeting them in the middle a little bit. We have an expectation on our team that one meal every road trip, there's no phones. They pick the meal. I don't care what it is. And I just tell them the reason that I want you to do it is I want you to talk to the people who are around you and have a conversation. And we have an expectation in our program that if there's an issue, it's a face-to-face conversation. It's not over text message. And we do at our first team meeting, I talk about and I give examples of texts and how I can send a text and it's coming this tone out of me, but you're reading it as a different tone. And that it's just so easy for messages to get misunderstood when it's always being typed or texted. And we just really encourage them to have those one-on-one conversations. And I know it's intimidating for them. It's hard, but it's just encouraging them to have that conversation and being able for them to feel like they can have them. And don't get me wrong, on my team, my assistant coaches tell me all the time, they're like, girls are scared of you. And I'm like, what are they scared of? Did I wear a big bad wolf costume today? But I think when you sit in this chair as the head coach, there's that intimidation a little bit for the
Yeah.
players. But I just continue to be me and joke around with them and, hey, how you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
And even if I've sensed they're a little intimidated by me, my favorite thing to do is go up to a player and be like, Jojo, and have him come up and just look at him and say, that was a great job. And find them doing things well and good
Yeah.
instead of them thinking like, oh no, what did I do?
Yeah.
And the girls have caught on to it now of I'm going to find you doing something good. I'm not going to humiliate you because people do not perform well at all when that happens. And that's a big difference from how coaches were coached to coach 30 years ago. There was a lot of intimidation,
Yep.
a lot of fear-based stuff. For me, I try to find them doing stuff well, and if they're not, explain it to them and find the way that they learn to be able to explain it to them. I think that's one thing that I've evolved as a coach is I just used to always be like, I'm going to show you. A lot of people don't learn that way. So being able to learn learning traits and what works for people. Do I need to show them on video? Do I need to put them in that position? Do I need to add weight and maybe hold them in a with a band so that they can really feel what's going on? How can I make the light bulb go off for them is really, I think, the key to being a successful coach right now in today's world is learning your students because our athletes are students and learning how to teach them in the way that they understand and not in the way that works for me, but what does it work for them? We all have had it, right? You've got that hitting coach that's got the magic words. So I always want to go to that hitting coach. And I could be saying the same words and it just isn't resonating. But respecting that and understanding that and really leaning into it instead of getting upset by it and being like, okay, then let's go there and let's talk about that. That was one thing at Cal State San Marcos. I had several players on our team who they asked me, they coach, can I still go to my hitting coach? And I told them, I said, you can still go to your hitting coach as long as we're not working against each other and we're not oil and water. I said, that's fine. If you want so and so to throw you front toss every Wednesday because you think it's going to help you, I'm not going to take that away from you.
Right.
We're all in this together, right? Your goal is to become the best softball player that you can. My goal is for you to be able to perform at the highest level that you can.
Yeah.
And if that works for you, then, that's fine. And I know that's way different than a lot of programs do it. Putting people in the best position for them to perform at their highest level. And for me, if a kid is coming to me, because it's very intimidating to come to a coach and say, hey, can I do this? If
Yeah.
they're coming to me and asking me, that tells me all I need to know about how important it is for that young lady to be able to have that. And a lot of times I'll be like, what are you guys talking about? Just talk me through that. And maybe if they're just connecting in a different way than I am. And for me, I'm one of those people who I'm like, maybe I don't have all the answers and I'm just going to steal it from that person. And if it works for you, then let's do it.
And at the end of the day, we're all striving for consistent results, consistent
Absolutely.
ability. So, however, we can get you there where you can go up and make consistent contact, you can throw consistent strikes, you're getting the glove on the ball, you're making good throws. We've won. I love that philosophy. I want to talk a little bit about intimidation because you used that word that you kids, the coaching staff thinks the kids are intimidated by you. How much of that comes from the fact that you speak with conviction, you say what you mean, what you say, and I don't see an ounce of insecurity in you, coach. And there's a lot of coaches that have that insecurity about wins, about what losses, about showing they're too tough, showing they're too soft. I don't see that. I see an authenticity in you. Don't you think that's what's intimidating to a 17, 18-year-old coming out of high school when they're just loaded with insecurities, when they have someone that doesn't seem to have any?
It definitely could be. For me, I've always just been like, I hope I'm not scaring them because of the things that I'm saying is putting them in fear. But you may be right and hitting it on the head. I always tell the girls, I don't ever talk about myself and my playing career. I mean, I'm like, it don't matter. It's
Yeah.
over. But it's
Yeah.
about what you can do. I know this. My players have always told me, like, coach, like, where do you get your energy from? And I'm like, I don't just wake up like this. I'm sorry. I'm like, I drink my same coffee every day. I order a large and I only finish about a third of it. So they're definitely making money on me. But I love my job. I love what I do. And I'm passionate about people. And softball is my platform. And I want to be able to give my energy to you and to them. And maybe that is intimidating because they're like, man, I got
It
to hit
is.
3 lotuses in order to even be like at a quarter of your level. That could definitely be it. I think I believe in what I'm doing. And I
Yeah.
think for anybody, as long as you believe in what you're doing, that can be intimidating for people because they may not be as confident.
It's obvious to me, and you go back to your San Marcos days, it's obvious to me your kids are drinking your Kool-Aid. They're seeing your confidence. They're seeing how comfortable you are in your own skin and how you coach and that you love it and you're not afraid to share you're sharing your home with them. You're bringing them into your home. Your wife, your dogs, your food, everything you're sharing with them. I think it's such a great example for young coaches to understand that the wins will come if the kids trust you, if the kids believe in you.
Absolutely. I do not sit up at night and wonder how many wins we're going to have or how many
Right.
losses we're going to have, because to me, it's all about the team, getting them to feel comfortable, getting them to believe. Because when they believe, then when they're in the moment where the game is on the line or the water gets a little hot, they don't feel it.
Right.
And that's where you see success in teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about the transition you're making from D2 to D1. And I know you were a D1 assistant, but so many of my friends in the last 2 years who are longtime Division III coaches, junior college coaches, NAI coaches, D2 coaches, I must have 5 or 6 friends that have gotten that D1 job after years of grinding at lower levels. What has that been like for you? You talked about the support staff. What's that been like for you from moving from that D2 to D1 level for those that don't understand the difference?
Some of the biggest things are at the D2 level, your scholarship amount is a lot less. At
Yeah.
Cal State San Marcos, I had 3 scholarships. So there's no such thing as a full ride. If I get someone $5,000, that was like me giving them my car.
How many kids do you carry on your roster? Just so we,
At Cal State San Marcos, we were anywhere from 22 to 24.
and only 3 rides that
Yes.
you had to break up.
Yep. And we would break those up into dollars. And at a California State University, there is no academic money that anybody is getting. So it is flat out just I was being able to help people with their cost of tuition.
And maybe a Cal State grant, maybe a Pell grant, maybe.
Yes, maybe
Okay.
depending upon the family's situation.
Okay.
And then they got to get housing in San Diego, in North County, San Diego, which is not cheap.
No.
But it was me explaining and being honest with families. This is what we have, and this is what we can do. And if that meant that something came up and I could find $500 to help give a kid out a semester, I would do that and they would jump for that. So you definitely have less scholarship money. Now, I was playing against some Division IIs that were fully funded when they had the 7.2. We went my last year at San Marcos, we go play Western Washington at Western Washington, and I'm laughing with Cheryl because I'm like, you should beat us. You have twice as many scholarships as we do. That was just
And lower tuition.
Yes.
Right.
I was fundraising basically for team travel, for bats, for just all those things. Anything that the team was getting, we basically were fundraising for. And for me as a coach, I wasn't hitting up our parents and saying, hey, we need $500 per. Like, we weren't doing that. It was, we were going out.
Yep.
Trying to find things other ways. I was fortunate in my time there to be able to meet some people who were really big supporters of the program and wanted to get behind that. The biggest thing I tried to do at San Marcos was never make the girls feel that. Like I just want you to come and play and I'll take care of all this other stuff.
Yep.
I had one assistant coach. He was part-time. He started off as halftime, and then my last year he got up to 0.75. So he was not even able to work 40 hours a week.
Right.
Staff was small. The athletic department was small. You had a lot of people who were absolutely willing to help in any way that they could, but it was them and 300 student athletes instead of being here at the University of Montana. I have an athletic trainer who travels with us. Our athletic trainer did not travel with us at the D2 level. Our athletic trainer here is at every practice. She's available and she only has one other team with us. That's really nice for our players to be able to go on anytime they need to and get that. We have our academic services here. We have 3 ladies who work in academic services. At Cal State San Marcos, we had one gentleman who worked in academic services, but he also had 7 other titles. So being able to get into him was tough, especially when you're going to register for classes and do those types of things. Both places have priority registration for classes, which is great because you need that. Here, our weight room and our strength coach, our weight room here can compete with any Power 5. Weight room at Cal State San Marcos, I made that thing sound amazing, but you were working out outside with 6 squat racks, and it was you have to see people working out in there to understand people can work out in there. At Cal State San Marcos, there was one strength coach for all the teams. Here we have 4 strength coaches on staff, so it's divided up. for when we can go. We were always traveling by bus at the D2 level, but our conference was all in the state of California. Every other year, we'd have to do a fly and then drive up to Humboldt because it's at the very top and we were at the very bottom of California. So your travel is a little bit different, right? The D2 level is regionalized for postseason. So there's always going to be one team out of the West. You're never going to cross bracket. It's super regionals, where at the Division I level, we do some regionalization, but then when you get to the NCAA tournament, it's not, there's only one team from the West that's going to make it, or only one team from a conference going to make it. That's not how it is. So the championships are set up a little bit differently.
Yep.
More people attend the games here. And we had good attendance at Cal State San Marcos. I think the facilities here at the University of Montana are unreal. The softball field is awesome. And we've got our own indoor that has 4K tunnels that you can pull back and have a full infield. We just opened up a bubble so we can have a full, so we can do everything we need to in there for the weather.
There you go.
28.
That's freezing.
But it's not that cold.
Not that cold.
It really isn't.
I live in Denver, Colorado. There's people outside with shorts on today.
In fact, I was looking at the extended forecast, and like the day that we might have our first practice, it's gonna be 40 degrees outside. My dad was asking me, he's like, "You guys gonna go outside?" I was like, "No, are you kidding me? Outside when it's 40 degrees." I was like, "If we have a game, then I'll go out there in that." I was like, "But we're gonna be in the climate controlled environment of our
bubble
and of our indoor as we do that," which is no different than any northern school. A big fan of the Division II model. It's life in the balance. Division II, just a couple other things I'll note. 15 hours in the fall is the max, with a mandatory 2 days off.
Yes.
It's 20 hours with 1 day off when you're in your championship segment. So
that's full time. That's 3-hour practices, right?
Yes.
6 days a week.
Yep. Absolutely. Definitely a little bit of a different time commitment. The 15 hours in the fall is tough as a coach because it also includes your strength and conditioning. Yeah. So if you're lifting 3 times a week, then you have 12 hours of practice at the D2 level, which, that can really start to be interesting.
Yeah.
D2, though, now it's a great rule for them that their coaches can give lessons. So that's going to really help at the D2 level, because I think you'll be able to see more programs have more assistant coaches because they can supplement by being able to give lessons. That wasn't a thing when I was at the D2 level. That was a new rule that just changed. They couldn't be of a PSA age and you could give lessons to them. So that's a great thing for D2.
That's a great thing.
The Division I level, the budget is bigger. There's more support staff. You're going to travel a lot more. Like for us, we're going to travel the first 6 weeks of the season. We're going to leave every Thursday at 6 in the morning. We're going to come back every Sunday at midnight.
Yeah.
So the travel is intense.
You have a recruiting budget now, right?
I do. Oh, yeah. But when I was at San Marcos, I could be at Huntington Beach Sports Complex from my house in an hour and 10 minutes. So that was nice. But it also meant I would just jump in my car and go recruiting all the time. Now we're planning, we got to make a trip and a flight. Although this summer I plan on probably living in SoCal for at least a month, just because of how I like to recruit and do camps.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
And why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so many teams too from these areas are going and traveling there to be able to play and given at Cal State San Marcos, I really only recruited California kids. We had a couple kids from out of state, but that was very uncommon. We're here at the University of Montana. We can recruit kids from anywhere. We're a WUI school, so we really focus on those WUI states, which is Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii, California, Arizona, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, because basically for us,
is that in-state tuition then for those kids?
Yeah, it's really close. So
really
it's
close to that. Okay.
So, but here you have to be a 3.9 to be able to get that, which
wow.
Yes.
All right, kids, are you listening?
You gotta have a
looking for.
Gotta have a 3.9. So that doesn't mean that we won't recruit kids from WUI states, because we certainly will. But the WUI is a big deal if someone can get that, because it really reduces the cost. It takes tuition down from basically $30,000 down to $8,000 if you're a WUI kid. So that's a big deal.
So if you've got 2 kids, one's got a 3.9 and one's got a 3.4 from those states, and you love them both, your first offer is going to the 3.9.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that was something that I didn't really need to worry about at the D2 level when I was coaching, because the amount of money that we could give was little. And then out of state, for me, I was like, the cost is what the cost is. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
So definitely more recruiting. as far as I would say this. I thought I was getting a lot of emails at Cal State San Marcos. I get like 200 a day recruiting. If I don't look at my email one day, it's Mount Everest times two. Recruiting's changed, right? Everybody's sending you a video. They're also messaging you all the time on Instagram and on X. I want to make sure I say the right name and not Twitter because I'm old if I say Twitter. I'm with it if I say X.
I've accepted the old.
Yeah.
I can't go to X. It doesn't
Yeah,
make
I know. It
sense.
sounds weird to me, but there's so many ways and so many contact points that people are reaching out to you to be able to
Yeah,
try to get in front of you. And in a sense, we're talking on the recruiting talk. I'll say this. For current student athletes, recruiting's changing, right? Every day. It's also changing every day for the coaches.
absolutely.
We're sitting here and roster limits are looming. We're waiting for the House settlement to make some decisions on if players are going to get paid. And there's going to be a trickle down effect with that for all levels. I'm sitting here wondering if I'm going to have a roster limit and what that's going to do. I know everybody thinks, oh, 25 softball players on a team and they're all going to get full rides. That is a myth. That's not going to happen. There is going to be about this many schools in the country that can afford to do that.
That's right.
So what you could end up seeing is people have roster limits, and then that means that people, like, let's say a school has 30 kids on their team, but they have a roster limit of 25. That means 5 kids that are currently on a school aren't going to be on that team anymore. And
That's
there's
right.
a trickle down with that. He got his junior college years back by a judge. So could you imagine if in 6 months from now, every junior college kid who's used 2 years of eligibility now gets that eligibility back? That hasn't happened. That was very much so a one-off for him,
Yep.
but that could be the trend, which means if you're a high school player right now, that just means the pot of who's available is getting
And bigger
bigger
and
and
bigger
bigger.
and
Uh,
older and more experienced.
You've seen it with the transfer portal, right? You've seen some programs who are basically only recruiting from the transfer portal, which has really slowed down recruiting. Shoot, 6 years ago, right? Every eighth grader in the country was verbally committing and they wanted to slow down recruiting, which recruiting has slowed down now with the new rules. But now with the transfer portal, you don't know what's going to happen. And there's so much unknown. I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, so if we have roster limits, I'm really concerned that this is going to happen. I have my end of the season meetings. My seniors graduate. Let's say I have 20 kids returning and I have 5 freshmen coming in. So I'm at 25, right?
Right.
And then let's say a pitcher goes into the transfer portal and I'm like, I really need a pitcher,
6'2", throwing 70 mile an hour.
right?
Loves,
What coach in the
loves
country,
cold weather.
right? You could just
Right.
order it up.
From Missoula. Yeah.
And there's going to be one or two options. Number one, can't even sniffer because I'm at my roster limit. Or number two, I got to call one of the kids who thinks they're coming back or coming here and saying, no, sorry, I'm going to go after the portal kid. So there is some major stuff that has to get figured out. And it has to get figured out for everybody. And nobody knows the answers to these right now. And you don't even know what's going to happen with Title IX, with everything that's going on with all this.
Yep.
The thing I just want to put out there to everybody is it's unsettling.
Yep.
It's uneasy for everyone. And if you are someone who's trying to get recruited, my advice to you is you do you and you keep working and you cannot let these outside factors bother you because they're out of your control, completely out of your control. You have to keep doing what you're doing. I'm a big proponent of if you find a program that you should go to their camp, get in front of them, go see that campus. That doesn't mean families go to 10 camps because that's really expensive. But if you have 2 or 3 schools you're really interested in, go to their camp, get in front of them, ask questions. If you're talking to coaches and you're talking to them on the phone and you have questions about this stuff, ask them.
Yep.
Someone could ask me, and I'm going to give them the same answer that I just gave you about what's happening in recruiting because it's always changing.
And you have to project the unknown. So you might have to say, that 25 number is going to be a hard cap. We're only going to lock in 23 kids because we need to go into the spring knowing that if there's somebody out there that we want, we've got to have that space. We've got to have that scholarship.
Exactly. And it's so crazy because we don't know. And so we are trying to project. Like I'm looking right now because we're bringing a ton of kids in next year as just part of getting things rolling here. And we're graduating 6 seniors. But when I came and took this job, I was like, hey, I'm recruiting the 25 and the 26 class at the same time, just with how everything works with September 1st.
And keeping an eye on 27 and another eye on 28
Oh,
while you're going through it.
100%. You have to.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, if we have a roster limit, I'm like, maybe the amount of 2026s I think I can bring in is less than what I thought originally. So you're like, okay, if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. And if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. And you have to be prepared for about 17 different scenarios, all while you've got people who are very stressed trying to get recruited. Because let's face it, anybody right now who's a junior or senior in high school is very stressed
Yeah.
because if they feel like they should know where they're going to school and they don't.
They
uh,
don't.
and it's really stressful for them and for their families. And you want to talk about how we talked about earlier that people have to be in a good spot in order to perform well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many kids are out there right now so stressed because they have this weight on their shoulders of this expectation of I should know where I'm going? How do you think they're going to perform every time they go out and play when they have that weight on their shoulders?
I know.
It
I'm going through it. I've
we're
got
asking we're
three senior
asking so
clients.
much of them, and
Yeah.
it is so hard. It's why you see so many kids not continuing with sports. And for me as a coach, I think the biggest thing that we have to remind every student athlete with who's at the recruiting age is you play because you love it,
Yeah.
not because you want to go play in college, because
Yeah.
then you're leaving it up to somebody else. You play because you love the game, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen. There are so many levels. It doesn't have to be the Division 1 level. Division 2, NAIA, junior college, Division 3. There are so many options out there. As long as you love the game and you're playing for the love of the game, you're going to be able to find your spot.
Yeah.
And maybe that spot is that you don't play at the next level, but then at least when you're hanging it up, you're hanging it up because you loved it and it was on your terms and you're not leaving it up to somebody else. And I think there's way too many families out there that are leaving their happiness on someone else instead of just go play.
That's
Just
right.
go play. Don't worry about who's at the game.
That's
And
right.
just go play. I can't tell you how many times I've had a colleague call me and say, you need to go watch this kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And guess what? That kid never saw this university show up at that game, but I trust that person. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I will go swing by and watch that kid. That happens all the time. Coaches talk all the time.
Me too. It happened for me
Because
all the
you
time
have
too.
just because you have a great game and you don't think anybody's there, that's not true. You
That's right.
never know who's watching. And I'll pull up on my phone the game and pull up game trackers. You know who's up and be like, oh, who hit that? Who struck her out? That kind of stuff happens all the time.
It does.
When you
And
got the sickness like I do for softball, that's what happens. You sit in your car, you're like all of a sudden, what game is that? What field? Oh, yeah. Let me check that out.
yeah. And I was notorious for never wearing my school colors. I didn't want to be pestered. I didn't want people wondering who I was. I just wanted to go watch the kid play. If I liked him, I was going to stick around and talk to the coach and the kid. If I didn't want that kid to ever know that I made a decision or there was something that I didn't like, I didn't want to hurt their confidence. And I don't think parents get that. There's people watching all the time. Coach, I know you got to go to a meeting. This has been, I may have to convince you to do a part 2 because this has been so good. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. Real quickly, 2 quick questions. You just took a D1 job. You're in staff meetings for the last 6 months. We've got changes to roster caps, scholarship caps, NLI, NIL, portal. What is the messaging from your AD and your president about how you guys should be perceiving all this? Is it patience? Is it, hey, here's the facts. Here's how we're going to handle the national letter of intent. Here's how we're going to do this. And what is the message that you're getting from the people above you?
A lot of it right now is that it's at the conference level. So your conference and the schools in your conference are probably all going to be doing the same thing.
Right.
We don't have anything definitive yet. Our ADs came in and talked to me and has asked me, he's like, how would you feel if we had a 25-person limit? And I'm like, I would feel like I wish I knew this a long time ago. But if that's what we're going to do and we're going to go into the revenue share and see what's going to happen, then just tell me what I need to do so that I can start to lead my program that way. It does sound, though, like for us in the Big Sky Conference that we will all either do it or not do it. And so it's a fair playing field. The scholarship thing, I know this, if we go to 25, I'm not getting 25 scholarships. My scholarship number is staying the same. So I think a lot of it right now is weather the storm, continue to do what you do day in and day out. And when the change comes and we have the hard decisions and the facts, and when they come, we will let you know. But for now, it is, I'm getting ready to have our first practice January 12th. Our first game is in February, and we're going down to GCU. And those are the things that I'm worried about. I'm continuing to have conversations with the recruits. I'm not changing how I'm recruiting, but we're having those conversations of things may change. And that may mean that I'm not making any more offers at this time. I may just be continuing that relationship, but I'll tell them why. Not because I'm dragging my feet and I don't want you to be here, but I don't want to have to make an offer and then have to retract it because of things that may happen. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
And I don't know how many coaches are going to lead with that type of integrity. I'd like to think it would be 100%, but I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of coaches that are going to dodge and duck instead of confront.
yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to
Yes.
sit in this seat, and I certainly don't want to make an offer and then take it away, because you want to talk about ripping the rug out from a family.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does happen. It could happen in a large amount with everything that's on the table. Our scholarship contract now, our scholarship agreement, that's what has replaced the national letter of intent, and those went out in November. Those are very similar to what they were before, just as far as the language and everything that was in it. It just no longer has the NIL up on the top. So our scholarship agreements are very much so the same.
Yeah.
But I've heard that there are some schools that are putting language in their scholarship agreement that if there is a roster limit that is put into effect by the NCAA, that all of this is null and void. I would just say the thing you can learn with that is to read those agreements very carefully and
Yeah.
to ask questions. And again, that's not the coach putting that in. That could just be the school putting it in or the conference putting it in.
That's right.
But I think a lot of things are going to change between now and when summer recruiting really opens up for softball in June. We'll have a lot more answers. You're going to see a huge shuffle. But I still believe what I said earlier is you just have to stay true to you and know that there's so many good options out there. And holy cow, there are so many great junior college options out there. Like, that is
Yes.
not a bad option. It's a
No.
great option. So many of your states, you can go to JC for free for 2 years and then be able to transfer instead of going somewhere and racking up a ton of debt. So please do your homework. There's great junior colleges all across the country who place kids into the Division I, Division II, NAIA, D3 level after they've gotten their AA, and there's just so many options. I just can't stress enough how great JUCO is for so many people, and it's not a step down. It's a great way to prepare you for what you need, and financially, it could make really good sense for a lot
Yeah.
of.
I typically ask you to give me one piece of significant advice to give my families, but you've given me an hour of it. So I'm not going to make you come up with something new. It's been a whirlwind of an education for me, Coach. I'm so thankful that you and I got to talk. I'm so impressed. I'm going to be a huge Grizzlies fan moving forward. Anything I can do to support your program, you've got me as a fan and as a supporter. Just thankful that we have you in the world coaching. You're the epitome of what I call significant coaching, and just impressed. Thank you for joining me today and being who you are.
Hey, thanks for having me, and go Grizz.
That wraps up this episode of Significant Coaching with Matt Rogers. A huge thank you to Stef Ewing, head softball coach at the University of Montana, for her grace, her leadership, and her mission to be a truly significant coach. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us bring more meaningful content to coaches and athletes everywhere. If you're looking to take your recruiting to the next level, you can schedule a recruiting strategy session with me, purchase my book, or even book me to speak at your school organization. Just head over to CoachMattRogers.com to learn more. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.